Now, with quote unquote, what's happening in Canada, like you just mentioned before, brings us to our next question. We're going to keep politics out of this conversation, but when you have a leader in the Canadian real estate space, we just can't give up on the opportunity to get your perspective. There is a war currently taking place between developers, real estate investors, politicians, and young couples and new families looking to buy a home but can't afford one. Everyone is blaming each other on affordability of real estate in Canada. Please tell us how we got here and what is Patrick Francey's solution to the unaffordability in Canadian real estate market, particularly in Vancouver and Toronto?
Oh man, that's such a big question. Something that you said was really the case is that, when we trickle down to, those first-time home buyers, for example, those new younger families that want to just own a piece of real estate and have their families grow up in that, it presents challenges. Then we have, what we are all about in terms of investors and what investors are trying to achieve. But to your point that you mentioned is that everybody's looking for something to blame. It's the foreign investors, those darn foreign investors. No, it's the investors, those darn investors, they're the problem. No, it's the NIMBYs, those not in my backyard people, it's their fault. So everybody's looking for someone or something to blame on what's happening in the real estate market. And the reality of it is it's a huge question because it's far more nuanced than any one thing. So we're going to tax those bad foreign investors. Well, okay, they've tried that. It doesn't work because it's only one part of a far bigger problem. And so when we look at what is the problem, we have to actually break it down. You look at Vancouver and Toronto specifically, and what have you got? You've got a very densified area for all the reasons it's densified. Greenbelt in Toronto and that GTA area. Vancouver, you've got mountains, you got ocean, and you got agriculture. So what do? Well, you got to build up, you got to densify, and that causes its own problems because then you've got those individuals who are literally saying, no, not in my backyard. I don't want a 20-story condo building in my neighborhood because it's going to destroy the neighborhood. We don't have parking. We don't have infrastructure. It's going to bring out crime, whatever the story is around all of those things. Then you've got bureaucrats, and I'm sorry, they just are at the municipal level who go, well, no, I don't want to be made wrong. I don't want to not get voted in. So they kick the can down the road. They tap dance around it. No decisions get made. It takes years to get a building handled in Vancouver.
A year and a half to 2 years to get a building permit, where our American friends are completing a project from when it's shovel ready to completion in less than 2 years. Yes. It was shocking when I was seeing those numbers, but please go ahead, Patrick.
But that's a valid point to interject, because that is exactly what's happening. It isn't outside. If you're a politician, we all joke about it, but the reality of it is, if you're a politician, your job, the minute you get elected, is to get reelected. And right now, and this has been the case for several years more and more, and we're seeing it even more now, is that it's politics over policy. Nobody's willing to make the hard decisions because you've got such a diverse view of the world by those people who vote you in. Like, we see the divisiveness, for example, right now in what's happening with the pandemic and lockdowns and mandates and vax and no vax and open up the economy or shut down the economy. It's like so polarizing. That starts with leadership, full stop. I don't care what anybody else has to say in that particular thing. If we had leaders that led, if we had leaders who were conscious of the words they were speaking, it would be far less controversial, far less polarizing, far less divisive. But because politics overtakes policy, those are the things that are happening. And it happens in the real estate world. So I can get fired up about politics. I don't think we have a leader, and I don't think we have a leader at the federal level right now. Recently, as we do this particular interview, 𝗖𝗽 𝗖𝗽 has thrown his hat in the ring. I think there's some chance there. I've followed Pierre for about 4 or 5 years now. I've started to grow as a fan of his and listening to him. But short of that, I don't look across our political landscape and see a bunch of leaders in there. I'm optimistic about Pierre, but he's got Pierre Poilievre, but he's also got to deal with what he's got to deal with. So is he the, he's not a messiah. Like, he's not going to come in and fix the world, but this is the problem that we face with politics in Canada. We're, 38 million, 37 million population. We're a small country in the scope of things. We don't have a lot. I mean, we have commodities and we have resources, but we're barely a rounding error, to the US and to other countries. So we don't have a lot of clout in that regard. And we certainly need a leader that can do that. So that all comes back to one fundamental issue that we have in the world of real estate. We need leadership right from the municipal level, right to the top, full stop. I don't know if that's kind of an answer, non-answer, because I could go on in depth.
I'll bring you right back to it. So just focusing on those young couples and new families who are trying to just buy a piece of real estate as a home, and not developers. And if you were trying to remedy that particular issue and trying to obviously find the cause and the problem to then create a remedy for it and have a prescription for it, you have to diagnose and then prescribe, right? So what is the problem? Why can't young couples afford a home? Is it because there's not enough product? Is it because developers can't build? And how can that be resolved? Is it because of mortgage laws that exist? What can remedy the issue for young families, new families and young couples to be able to buy a home in
Yeah, well, I think there's a couple things that are happening right now, right? Is that if we go back 2 years, or even go back 5 years. I mean, this has always been some level of a conversation, hasn't it? Listen, I'm 63 years old. When I was 18 years old, affordability was an issue. Interest rates were an issue. This is a normal march of a growing economy and a growing population and the need for people to actually, want to own a home, or what they believe is a need, okay? There's a desire for Canadians to own their space. That's fundamentally, there's a belief system there that is driving part of the problem. Now, if we go back 2 years, we wouldn't be having the same conversation to this degree. It's become a problem given the economic conditions that we find ourselves in. And so I don't know, is there a solution to the problem? I don't know. How about opening up the economy? How about getting things rolling again so that builders aren't having to increase costs? How about getting the bureaucracy out of the way and getting the bureaucracies out of the way so that we can actually make some decisions to, develop and increase supply strategically and be really clear on it. We talk a lot about supply issues. There's no supply issues when it comes to condos, to be honest with you. The biggest supply issue we have is single family detached units. That's the biggest challenge that we face. Go to Alberta, there's more condos than they know what to do with, but people don't want condos. Even in Vancouver, your Vancouver market although the condo market is hot, it's not that there isn't available units. And you can go down in through the lower mainland, Toronto, same thing, but people don't want it. Well, what changed? Well, the pandemic changed. I got to work from home. Recent stat I can top off the top of my head is that, our work from home cohort increased 300%. 25% of workers are now permanently working from home. You're going to do that in a 400 square foot condo when you've got somebody else who wants to work from home? I mean, gosh, we live on a property, my wife and I both, we live on an acreage with 2 separate buildings, and it sometimes feels cramped. I joke about that, but the point is that I can't blame a mother and a father with 2 kids saying, I can't work in a townhouse, I can't work in a condo. This isn't functional, and they're telling the truth about that. And so when we look at all of the conditions that we have today, it's more, I believe, it's a big part of what's happening in this affordability issues, driven by the needs of people that have shifted. And working from home is a big part of that. Not wanting to be in close contact is another part of that. You and I, may be pretty casual when it comes to our fear or lack of fear around COVID. I have zero fear around it, like none. And that may be just me being dumb, but I just don't have any fear around it. Lots of people don't have that. They're actually very afraid. And so I'm not going to make that wrong, but then understand that there's a lot of those individuals who don't want to be in a condo. They don't want to be going up and down an elevator. There's still a stigma around it, and they're nervous about it.